internal, what is internal, and that my nafs does not get used to being in a state of focus on material things, the mundane and the worldly things. Now, if you think about a situation where you never took a break, you were just involved in your dunya. So, you're in your job, or you're doing, you're dealing with people, whatever it is that you're doing, and you never take a break to just stop and look inward. What happens if you do that? If you never take a break and stop and look inwardly, then what happens is that my whole world is going to become about what is happening outside of myself. That starts to define my whole world. So whatever is happening in my life outside of me defines me. And so what ends up happening then is I go up and down with the ups and downs in my environment. And anyone who's lived in this dunya for longer than 3 minutes realizes that the dunya is nothing but ups and downs. The dunya is nothing but change and inconstancy. And so if I am all about what is happening outside of myself in the dunya, external, then what that means is internally I will never have peace. Internally I will never have constancy. I will never have stillness internally, because all of my focus is on what is happening outside of myself. It's on what is happening in the mundane, what is happening in my dunya. But if I stop and 5 times a day, now if we do this right, this is what it's about. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a prescription, but in order for it to work, you have to follow the prescription. And if I follow this prescription and I break away 5 times a day, then what I'm doing, and again, this is if I'm praying properly, and I have khushu' and I have focus of heart and mind, then what I'm doing is I'm pulling myself away from the focus external, and I'm refocusing internal. And I'm looking at the things which are not seen, the things which I wouldn't otherwise notice if I didn't stop to take that break. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us, out of His mercy, this prescription for how to be successful while still living in the dunya, but not letting the nafs take over, not letting the dunya take over. In the case of siyam, I am disconnecting from a physical, almost like I'm disconnecting from the physical world, because hunger is a physical need, and eating is a physical, satiate. You satiate yourself, but you're satiating yourself physically. So what I do is I cut off the physical satiation, and instead I fill myself with what is spiritual. I'm feeding my soul. So it's kind of like I'm starving my body but feeding my soul when I fast. And subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He put us in this world, but He didn't just leave us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us exactly the prescription of how to be successful in this life. And siyam is very, 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 it is a huge part of that. When I don't break away from the physical needs and from the dunya, what ends up happening internally is that my heart starts to die, because all of my attachments are material. All of my attachments are to the dunya, which is again constantly changing and is fading away. And so my heart then starts to die, and I start to develop more inner ailments. I start to develop more diseases in my heart. Sawm is an opportunity to liberate myself from these attachments, and therefore the addiction to what is not lasting, to what is not ultimate. Because you know what, the human being, and this is again, if you look at the society that we live in, all of the focus is on the physical being. All of the focus is on, pleasure, physical pleasure, material things, things that I can feel and touch, and again, all of it is within the physical realm. But here's the thing: no one can argue that I am not just a physical being, right? Now, obviously there's more to me than just my physical self. And the reason why I know that is because, for example, we feel pain, and it may have nothing to do with our body. Our body may be completely well, and there is nothing hurting our body, but we still feel pain. What is it that's feeling that pain? It's something other than the physical being. There's another non-physical part of me. I also feel joy. Again, that's not something that I feel in my physical body. I think. When I think, is that physical? So how can we possibly follow a philosophy of life that are just about the physical? Eating, sleeping, drinking, and being merry, right, in the physical sense. This is denying a very important component of my being, which is the non-physical component. Then the question is, how do I feed that non-physical component? How do I feed my soul? Well, guess what? Chances are you're not going to see that on commercials, on TV. The commercials on TV don't talk about feeding your soul. The commercials on TV don't talk about, being a better, being more honest or being more sincere or connecting to God. The commercials are usually just about the physical world, as if I was just a physical creature. Now, when Ramadan comes, fasting liberates me from all of that. I begin to know that there really is life beyond the physical realm, and there is joy beyond material joy. And one of the consequences of this, you'll find, is that I start to feel more kindness and compassion towards the people who don't have what I have. So when I am fasting, I am voluntarily keeping myself from food and water and any kind of drink. But there are people who are involuntarily have to keep themselves from food and drink, and that's because they don't have the means to buy food and drink. And so by doing this, I also am able to feel more compassion towards the poor and towards those who don't have a home to come back to for iftar, and these large, extravagant dinners that we have, to break our fast. And inshallah, I'm going to talk a little bit about that and how that really misses the point of what Ramadan and what Siyam is really supposed to do. Actually there's a statistic that shows that in fact in Ramadan, people spend more money. Now this is very ironic. In Ramadan, people actually spend more money on food and desserts than they do outside of Ramadan. So Ramadan came in order to take the focus off of food and put the focus on the non-physical world. And yet a lot of us Muslims, what we do is we do the opposite. We actually put more focus on what we're eating. We just kind of wait till iftar to do it, right? So you'll find that there is such an emphasis on this idea of having extravagant iftars and what are we going to eat, and we put so much money and thought into having very fancy food and desserts and everything like that. But this completely misses the point. The whole point of Ramadan is not just for us to be hungry and thirsty. The whole point of Siyam is to show the nafs, to show the individual that there is more to life than the physical world. There is more to life than the material pleasure and the material joy. That there is a deeper and realer joy and a deeper and realer fulfillment than just eating, sleeping, and drinking. So subhanAllah, we really, we have to have the correct focus of why it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us to fast. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about fasting in the Quran, He gives inshallah I'll get to that, but He gives a reason why fasting was prescribed. And when we, again, indulge, so what we do, we fast all day and then we indulge in food at the end of the day. The reason why this misses the point is because when we, practically speaking, when we eat so much at the end of the day, now what happens is, and we've all experienced this, I'm sure, at some point or another, we feel like so like almost, just drowsy, right? Our mind is almost asleep. And when we go to salah, inshallah we go to salah after we break our fast, we feel almost just unable to focus in salah. We feel like the mind is bored, the mind is sluggish. And what we've done now is, because we have eaten so much, our mind becomes clouded, we're extremely tired. And this goes against the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, who he used to break his fast with, and as soon as to break his fast with dates and or water, and then go to salah, and then have break his fast on something small, pray maghrib, and then come back and eat. But filling the stomach, what that does is it numbs the mind. And I think that, subhanAllah, this is probably one of the reasons why when someone is feeling depressed or feeling down or feeling anxious, they do seek food. Because, subhanAllah, there's something about food that when you go to food and you fill yourself, there's a sort of numbness that happens. I don't have to now feel anymore. It's sort of it's a sort of an anesthesia, so that I don't have to really face what it is that's bothering me, or I don't have to really feel it. And so this is really something that food can do when you overindulge in it. So keeping in mind that the focus of Ramadan is not what we're going to eat for iftar. The focus is not how fancy it is, or how many different dishes we're going to serve or eat. The focus is exactly the opposite. Now, I want to talk about the idea, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about fasting in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, in Surah Al-Baqarah, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that fasting was prescribed for you, as it was prescribed for those who came before you, for a very particular reason, and that is so that we may attain taqwa. So the purpose of fasting is for me to attain taqwa. The question is, what is taqwa? Now, taqwa